Hi everyone, welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. I first became acquainted with the comics creator, the voice in comics, who's currently talking with me through the Excellence in Graphic Literature Award with a book. You might have to help me with the pronunciation here. La Voz de Mayo Tata Rambo?
That is it. Yeah.
All right, fantastic. Delighted to be talking with comics creator Henry Barajas. Henry, thank you for jumping in and joining me for a few minutes.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to talk about my work and myself anytime anyone's willing to listen.
Well, I'm always willing to listen. Glad to have you on here anytime. I hope you consider it an open invitation. And
Thank you.
I generally ask about what connected you to comics and how you knew it was the space for you.
That's a good question. I have been, in comics. I mean, I think the medium has spoken to me ever since I was able to hold a thought, and I think I'm very lucky that I got to study it and read it and enjoy it at such a young age. And it was always something I has always been in my life. And whether anybody realizes it or not, it's always in other people's lives as well. The comics are literally everywhere. Subliminally, people don't even realize they're reading them half the time. So I think I'm just lucky that I've been able to see that and recognize it and have the opportunity to share stories and my thoughts and opinions and through this wonderful medium.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. And I can't help but notice the Spider-Man poster over your shoulder as you're talking about like the subliminal
Yeah,
presence of
yeah, no, I
comics.
got that for free at Golden Apple, which is shirt I'm wearing from that
Nice.
shop, and also the Love and Rockets signing they did to celebrate their box set 40th anniversary. So yeah, no, it's I love comics, and I've been very lucky that I get to read them all the time and make them and celebrate them and try to get them in the hands of as many people as possible.
Love it. Love it. I'm with you on that affinity. That's part of the reason why I do this show is to put words out there about comics and about other kinds of books as well. Curious about the kinds of stories that really especially draw you within the medium as a creator.
That's a good question. I've I really love uh this, stories that revolve around justice and injustice, and that has always been articulated in the comics that I first started reading, be about Batman and Spider-Man and Wonder Woman and those kinds of characters, and to have my taste mature and grow to find those kinds of stories being told in so many different genres. I'm lucky that I'm currently working on my next graphic novel that is a justice and injustice type of story, to finally get back to that type of story that has been giving me so much joy, and to be at a point in my life where I've absorbed enough of it, and I think I have matured as a storyteller to be able to handle this, this archetype and do it justice.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah. Powerful messages to put out there. And I know that you've created in worlds like Helm, Grey Castle, Break the Walls. I was going to return to the title I mentioned at the outset, Tata Rambo, and I was just curious how that story came to be and what inspired that particular book.
Um, it came to be when back in 2015, was a journalist. I got let go from the paper I was working with. This was at a time where paying for media was not really on everyone's budget,
Hmm.
where I think because of Donald Trump and because of um the amount of emphasis that he puts on his on fake news and really attacking the media, I think inadvertently made people want to pay for their local journalism. I mean, there's always more room for that. Unfortunately, there's still, you know, big corporations that own a majority of the papers and media outlets in this country. So when you do pay for that journalism, sometimes it doesn't go, 9 times out of 10, it doesn't actually go to the journalists. It goes to shareholders and trickles down. Um, but La Voz de Mayo came because I was going to write, I was already writing a lot, and I wanted to write my great grandfather's biography because he had been in and out of the VA a lot. And it wasn't until I read March by Congressman John Lewis and Andrew Aden and Nate Powell, published by Top Shelf, that really gave me the roadmap to tell a story that was about the struggles of Mexican Americans, Native Americans,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
it be something that comics could appreciate. And I feel very lucky that those, those moments had came to my life where that gave me the ambition and the drive to tell that story. Very lucky that it resonates to this day. It's been since 2019 since it was published.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I'm constantly getting messages and getting people to, asking me to talk about it. And I like to say I wrote my obituary line, the first line of my obituary a little early, which, I'm glad. I hope Lavos de Mayo is something people can come back to and be inspired in so many different ways.
Yeah. Yeah. When you mentioned March and such an inspiring book, and uh, I appreciate the inspiring that you do through your work as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, March, I think, is the greatest thing that's ever happened to comics.
Mm.
I think it really legitimized comics in in the book world, in the library worlds. Just it was hard to break those barriers and those preconceived notions that comics was all just a superhero genre
Hmm.
when it's really a beautiful medium that, a lot of people can absorb when they don't have either the attention span or the reading comprehension that you need to study a textbook or a novel. So very grateful that comics is now finally in a place where you don't have to explain that comics are still coming out. You don't have to explain that comics aren't just for kids when they're literally for everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm curious about the work that currently has your focus, as well as places where people can go to follow along and see what you're creating.
Well, I am currently, like I had mentioned before, I'm working on a Chicano noir that I cannot wait to be uh more more open about. Unfortunately,
Mhm.
it's still in the stage in the early stages, but that pretty much has my undivided attention. I've been reading and watching media and news and anything I can that's within the 1940s. So it's just it's one of those projects that is interesting to me, and I don't know if it'll be interesting to anyone else, but it is definitely something that I really want to do because I love noir and I love incorporating uh, Mexican American history in my work, which is kind of an obvious thing, which if people are interested in actual nonfiction, I just the comic I just wrote for the Department of Education in New York City, the school district. It just released digitally the Dolores Huerta comic about the iconic, legendary civil rights and farm workers' rights icon and advocate Dolores Huerta, who doesn't normally get the kind of love and appreciation that she should, as history has, kind of told us over and over again. It's, you know, the men in the movements or the in, you know, always get the center of attention.
Hmm.
And it was really important for me to tell the story as close to the way that Dolores does. And she has, she's in her 90s now, I think, and she has told her story for so long that it's really it made it easy to do this comic with Louis Chen, Gab Contreras, and Jay Gonzo. Shout out to Joe Schmidt over at the comics civics and comics group who
Hmm.
believed in me and was kind enough to include La Voz de Mayo into the New York public education curriculum. So millions of children for the next decade are going to read La Voz de Mayo and now the Dolores Huerta comic. Um, so, that is kind of like that's the win I'm celebrating now, and it's free. Like anyone can, as long as you have access to broadband internet, you can download it, you can read it, you could share it. It's meant as a teaching tool to help, get the word out about Dolores and the migrant farm workers and the union organizers that made it possible for us to, enjoy the kind of food that we have, and for migrant farm workers to have some securities and some benefits that regular, everyday working Americans take for granted.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And glad to hear that the work is going out there and that many hands are finding their ways to your pages. Uh, Curious about that last part there of where people can go and see what you're working on.
Yeah, I mean, I have a newsletter that's currently with Substack. Uh, I'm looking for a new home, but as long as you sign up for my newsletter, it carries over to whatever service I'm using. That's kind of the best way with considering how volatile social media is now and how restrictive it's getting. Email, no one really changes their emails, so the best way to keep in contact with me is through my email. I also have a daily comic strip that comes out Monday through Saturday called Gil Thorpe, so I'm always on Go Comics. But yeah, no, that is probably the best way to keep in touch and to keep up with. It's funny. Yeah, I've been working on so many comics that things come out and you're just like, oh yeah, that was done a year ago or months ago,
Right.
and you're like, a completely different person by that point and already late on other things. So
Yeah.
the pipeline, it gets clogged, but it clears out at some point and things come out eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, did we miss anything in the talk through that you want to make sure to share before we close out?
No, just for people to support their local comic shops, their libraries, their educators, and to listen to your podcast and share it with everyone, and and try to enjoy this life while we still can.
Great messages, and I appreciate the plug as well. I appreciate the plug as well. Henry, glad to have you back anytime, and I appreciate what you're doing in comics and storytelling, and may the creating continue.
Same to you, and thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.